Betel nut, also known as areca, has been grown in Taiwan for thousands of years. A mild stimulant, it's actually a berry used in rituals by indigenous Taiwanese peoples. In the 80s and 90s, chewing betel nut became a habit of builders as Taiwan's concrete jungles sprang up, leading to soaring prices and plantations proliferating across the island.
But chewing betel nut also leads to oral cancer, and the plantations have a detrimental effect on soil quality. For a decade, the government has been trying to curb betel nut farming. How much headway has it made? Let's find out in our Sunday special report.
The farm worker extends his reaping hook, grasps the betel nut, and pulls down a bunch with one sharp tug. Zhao Chung-chuan has been growing betel nut for over 30 years and is the largest areca supplier in Taiwan, with an areca palm plantation extending over 100 hectares. For him, betel nut is green gold. In Taiwan's boom years, the 80s and 90s, chewing betel nut as a pick-me-up became popular among blue-collar workers, such as builders. The financial rewards of growing betel nut are considerable. It's less labor-intensive than other crops, as the only two steps in the farming process are weeding and harvesting. And every time an areca bears fruit, it produces hundreds of betel nuts. It seemed as if overnight, Taiwan's mountains were covered in areca palms, which stretched over 50,000 hectares at the peak of the industry. Betel nut was the country's second largest cash crop after rice. But a series of natural disasters beat the green gold industry down from its zenith. The 1999 Jiji Earthquake loosened earth and debris in mountains across Taiwan. And in 2001, Typhoon Toraji triggered landslides of more than 70,000 cubic meters of earth in Hualien. The vast forests of betel nut were seen as one of the main culprits that caused the disaster. Then, in 2003, the World Health Organization declared that betel nut was a Group 1 carcinogen.
That was when the Ministry of Health and Welfare started looking to prevent the expansion of betel nut out of concern for public health. You have to start by reducing the source and then reducing the proportion of the public who consume it.
Every year, oral cancer kills about 2,300 people in Taiwan, 90% of whom are betel nut users. Land conservation and public health concerns led the government to launch a policy to phase out betel nut forests in 2008. After just 2 years, however, the policy was judged to be failing and was altered by the Control Yuan. When the documentary Beyond Beauty, Taiwan from Above hit cinemas in 2013, it reignited public concern about the environmental damage caused by betel nut farms.
In light of Jiji Po-lin's documentary Beyond Beauty, everyone thought that there was an urgent need to strengthen management of the betel nut industry to protect our mountain slopes. So in 2013, the Executive Yuan started holding meetings, and then in 2014 determined that we should launch this areca farm management scheme.
Officials were encouraging betel nut farmers to convert their land, with a 150,000 NT subsidy for every hectare of areca plantation chopped down, and another grant of 50,000 NT to plant another crop. But the Agriculture and Food Agency's figures show that since the scheme began in 2008 until 2016, only about 15% of Taiwan's betel nut forest was cut down, just 8,000 hectares. Kang Tzu-fu is the largest tea seed supplier in Taiwan. Encouraged by the government's anti-betel nut policy, he converted his betel nut plantation to one of the officially recommended crops, bitter tea, which is excellent at helping soil retain water. But as he explains, most betel nut farmers are reluctant to switch crops.
The
main advantage of betel nut is that it doesn't take much labor. You don't have to manage it that much. You don't have to use pesticides or do so much other work. It's just weeding twice a year at most, usually just once a year. You only need to fertilize once a year, not like other crops which need to be fertilized at least 3 or 4 times.
In 1993, Kang Tzu-fu bought 1.7 hectares of hillside land to plant betel nut. With a minimum of effort, the plantation brought in 500,000 NT a year. Bitter tea is much more of a headache, and there are also considerable costs involved in converting to a new crop.
The maximum subsidy is 250,000 NT. If you do it like me and get rid of all the areca palm trunks in the first year and hire workmen and buy the new saplings, you actually spend the whole lot in the first year.
The initial investment required to convert a plantation is just the first hurdle. Next, farmers face the shortage of agricultural labor, which is especially acute in mountainous areas. That's why most of the betel nut farms that have been converted are in low-lying regions, and why the policy has done almost nothing to improve water retention in the insecure soil of Taiwan's mountainsides.
A betel nut plantation is not like a forest with multiple species forming different layers. It's like a broken umbrella. When it rains, the betel nut leaves can't divert any of the water. In fact, when the rain falls from the sky, if the ground is not protected by any cover or stones, the rain will pound directly on the soil.
In 2017, the subsidy program stopped accepting applications, but there are still more than 42,000 hectares of betel nut farms nationwide. With the health of Taiwan's soil as well as its people still in danger, perhaps deeper and more creative solutions are required to kick this most Taiwanese of habits.